This is the girl that I want. This is the girl that I want. Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. This is the girl that I want. This is the girl that I want. Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. Girl that you used to know.
Good evening, everybody out there. You tuned in to another episode of The Boy. Got a special guest on tonight. Got Izabel Angelova on. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm really glad you decided to come on the show. I hope you're as glad and not as nervous as you were saying early on. Are you doing okay?
I'm doing just fine.
Awesome. Well, tonight's show we're going to explore a little bit about what Izabel does. She's a model and a finance nerd pursuing a master's right now. So some pretty interesting stuff going on with her. And you've been doing some pretty cool stuff locally lately, right? Weren't you just in a fashion show?
Yes, so that was last week, and that was a project for the local art institute, which, if you don't know, it's just off Bay Meadows and Phillips. It's like on Bay Pine Road, kind of close to where the Florida Coastal Law School is. But basically it was organized by the marketing and design majors that were at the Art Institute, and it was really great. It was at the Terrace Suites out at Everbank Field, and you know, they were showcasing a lot of local boutiques. It was great exposure for everyone and a lot of fun. So next year you should definitely come out if you missed it.
So was that sort of the theme of the show? Was showcase, like showing the are these clothing boutiques, or what do you mean by boutique?
Well, there's a lot of smaller boutiques, like in Five Points and San Marco.
Are
even
they
out towards
stores?
the yeah.
Or do they design their own clothes or anything like that?
Usually they showcase smaller designers. Sometimes they do local designers, but they're just, each one has its own style and kind of like a niche. So it's stuff that you would find that's different from what's necessarily, in like the department stores. So usually the boutique owner will work with very, like 5 or 6 select clothing lines and have a unique feel and unique style to their boutique.
I see.
So they do these types of events, again, to draw more people to their stores.
That's really cool. So I want to get into sort of how you got into that in a minute. But before then, I'm sure you talked to your friends and folks that you know that you're going to be on the show, hopefully. And I'm sure they are interested in knowing a little bit more about you. So if you wouldn't mind, give us a sort of synopsis of your life up till now in like a couple minutes, of like the highlights.
Highlights, well, I was born in Bulgaria, lived there until I was 9, and my mom won a green card, and we decided to come check America out, and we did. We liked it, obviously. We stayed, and we're naturalized citizens now. Been living in Jacksonville, or rather, we moved to Jacksonville in 2005, and I've kind of spent the last 4 years living in South Florida. I went to FIU, and that's pretty much where this whole modeling thing comes in. And I did it through college, really enjoyed it, doing it more as a hobby than as a source of income right now. Because I'll tell you this much, working in finance is a much better source of income than modeling ever was. And also, obviously, this has long-term potential, whereas with modeling, you're always facing the fact that you have an expiration date.
Wow.
So.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but not for me, because going into it, I was always clear that I had other things that were the number one priority, and I always approached it as something that would be nice and fun to do on the side. And I mean, I never kind of got over my head with it.
I see. So do you make it back to Bulgaria much?
I've been back twice, and I wish I could go every year, but it's such a long flight and a 7-hour time difference that if you go, you want to stay. And you don't always have the opportunity to take like a month or two off reality, basically, to go and experience a whole different world.
Can you describe it a little bit for us? Because I've never been to Bulgaria. I'm sure a lot of folks listening have never been there or know much about it.
Yeah, well, for me, the thing that's really special about it is that the entire rest of my family is there, aside from my mom and my dad. So I get to experience a whole different feeling and atmosphere just from the standpoint that, again, you have your whole extended family there, or I have my whole extended family there.
When
But
you
aside
visit, does
from
everybody like come and to see
Meet
you
me
and
at the
stuff like that?
airport?
Do they really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Like how many people are we talking about?
Well, when I went, I guess it was 2 years ago now, it was my aunts and uncles and my mom's cousins. It was nice. It was nice to know that you have like such a large group of people that in one way or another you're blood relatives, and then also, they care enough to like come and meet you in the airport in the middle of the night, when your flight lands. Other than that, Bulgaria, like if you were experiencing it as a regular tourist who doesn't have family there, I'm sure it can be quite a culture shock, because there's a big part of the country, like if you leave Sophia, which is the capital, or Varna, or the Black Sea, any of those resort towns, it's very, it's like taking a step back like 50 years, because it's very like rural and agricultural to a great extent.
Okay.
But it's kind of a dichotomy, because everyone still has their like TV and their cell phones, and like the old generation, they still have farms, they grow all their own food, but then it's like, they're plowing and then they'll take a break and go talk on their cell phone.
Sure.
Or, my grandpa's always complaining about, the channels on cable or something like that.
So there's some modern luxuries mixed in with this sort of, like you said, agrarian sort of culture.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, like I said, it's a dichotomy. Sometimes it's really hard to wrap your mind around just the way that people live in the rural areas. But it's definitely nice. Like, everything is much more laid back. Even in the cities, I feel like people there, because it's just like the rest of Europe, they have a lot more things that are socially provided for, like by the government and stuff. So they take a lot of that for granted. And
Like what kind of stuff?
I mean, I feel like everybody gets to enjoy a more relaxed pace of life because you know that you're paying as long as you're paying your taxes, you're not going to be having healthcare costs
Sorry
or
about
car
my
insurance.
dog. He has to
Yeah,
decide
your
to
dog is
eat.
going to town over there.
He wants to eat and drink right this minute. Like he was completely silent until I started recording, and then suddenly he has to walk
He was
around.
taking a nap. I love the
eat.
fact that you have his bowls propped up because your dog is honestly a borderline pony. Like,
Yeah, he's pretty big. He's a supermodel.
he's awesome. He's very cute. Your dog is awesome.
I think he's cool. But go ahead. You were saying that as long as you pay your taxes and stuff.
Right. A lot of this stuff that I feel stresses us out, like, car insurance, that stresses me out.
Yeah.
Every time my car insurance is due, I'm like,
Sure. Like, damn.
yeah.
Forgot about that.
Right, exactly. So they don't have a lot of that. And also, I think because everything is closer together, people...
Even though they're farming and stuff, it's still pretty close.
No,
to
I
them.
mean, people don't farm right at their house.
Oh, they
Well,
don't?
sometimes they do. But as far as distances,
Do you have like
you're
a
still...
chunk of land someplace, and then you work that, and then you come home to a different
Yeah,
place?
pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How do you make sure nobody goes in your land and takes your stuff?
I have no idea. People
just-
there's like some kind of community consensus. I think a big part of it is if you are living in the rural areas, everybody knows everybody. So if you steal somebody else's strawberries, they're gonna know.
Gotcha.
But in the cities, everybody's also living in like high-rise apartment buildings.
Okay.
So, realistically, there's a lot of people per square foot. And people have a much easier time getting together, going out. You can actually walk places. You don't have to drive everywhere like you do here.
Okay. Do people, do people have cars much out there? Like, since you don't really need to? Like,
Yes,
people in
Boyd,
New
they
York
do.
don't have cars, and people
It's like New York. Like, do you ask New Yorkers if they have cars?
Sure, yeah, all the
I
time.
mean, a lot of people don't, but in general, it's not like an uncommon aspect of what you see in New York. And they also have really great public transit. What's going on with your dog?
He needs to go outside. Sorry about that, because he would keep bothering us until he went outside. And then I just had to make sure he didn't mess anything up.
You gotta take care of business.
He has to do it right now. That's the thing about listening to the Boyd, is that sometimes you gotta listen to me take care of my dog.
Well, you can't blame him.
No,
he's so
he's
excited.
He is. He is excited. All right, so it looks like we have a few viewers listening along. Hey, make sure to give us a call at 904-638-5119. So if you want to ask Izabel any questions, or if you have anything to say, give us a holler. You can also join in on the chat stream. So if you want to type something in, because maybe you don't feel like being on broadcast or whatever, just type it in and we'll address your question or comment.
Hi, Mom. Love you. Even though you're late for everything.
Hey, better late than never, right?
Right.
So that's really cool. That's really awesome that you get to experience that total culture shift. I mean, there's places like that in the U.S., I bet.
I'm sure there are. I just haven't had a lot of exposure to them. Like when you go to certain parts of Homestead in South Florida, it's all like just patches of farms, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's one area where you can experience that. But it's just nice to be able, like you said, to experience that once in a while. And I wish it was more often. Last time I went there, I actually got to experience a little bit of beekeeping.
Oh, do you have an apiary?
Right, yeah. So my mom's cousin, we went to like their country house,
Okay.
and they have like 3 or 4 beehives that they tend to, and I got to see them like take the honeycombs out of the beehive, and then you have like a little scraper thing, and you take the top layer of wax off to
Yeah.
expose the honey, and then you put that in a centrifuge, and that's how you get the honey out.
Uh,
It was pretty cool.
did you have some fresh honey?
Yep.
Is it weird to you that honey is basically the spit up of a bug?
Yeah. But we use lots of parts of insects that I'm sure we'd rather not know we're consuming.
Oh, you mean accidentally? Or do we do it on purpose?
No, I mean, I've heard from for a lot of processed foods, like some dyes and other components of them come from bugs, essentially. Oh, and other cultures obviously just downright eat bugs as a delicacy. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have any problem with it. I just think it's interesting. Whenever time I eat honey, I always think about that this has been processed through, like,
The
a
digestive
bee. Yeah,
system of a bee.
through
But they're
a
pretty
bug.
awesome, though.
It is cool.
I just think it's kind of sad because their line of defense is their stinger,
Oh, right.
but then they
a
die
kamikaze
after they
defense.
sting you. And I just think that's really sad. So basically, don't agitate bees so they don't have to commit suicide out of fear of you. Anyway.
I guess if that's a one takeaway you can take from here is just be nice to the bees. And I keep hearing more and more about the bee crisis that we're having across the world. Like there's less and less honeybees.
Right, because there's in some ways less and less for them to pollinate, and
Well, they're eating the stuff that they could pollinate. Like I was watching something. I don't know firsthand, but I was watching something about China, and there's folks that actually have to pollinate flowers. They have to go one flower at a time, and like take like
a little brush.
Q-tip or a brush or something, and get some pollen from one flower, move it over to another flower, and that's how they get apples, and that's how they get pears, and
Wow.
all of the things that they make or they have over there. A lot of them are hand pollinated now because the bees aren't around.
Wow. Well, obviously, I think another reason why they're dying out is the environmental changes and the dog. What's going on with the dog?
Oh, no, sorry.
Are you just checking?
I was
on him?
listening. I was listening. He's weird. So he dug a hole under my fence, and so if I let him, hold on. Tell us a little bit more about, let's see. Well, okay. Hold on. Let me just go grab it. So, did you guys, what else did you do with the honey? Did you just do you bottle it or something? Do they sell it, or what do they do with
No,
all
you
that
just
honey?
jar it. I mean, it's
Can you trade it for some vegetables from other people in the
I'm
neighborhood?
sure you
or what?
could, but the reality is, from the 4 beehives, you don't want to take all the honey out of all the
Yeah,
beehives.
because they
You
actually
need to
need
leave-
it for the babies and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And each
you
other.
need to. You can't consume all of it. You need to rotate how you're harvesting each beehive, and you can't take all the honey out. Otherwise, basically, the bees will leave.
Okay.
And like you mentioned, you are also basically killing off your bee population if you do that. So from 4 beehives, you're not actually able to take I don't know, a dozen jars of honey out.
I see.
It's 2 or 3 big jars, and you can store that for future consumption. It
Sure.
doesn't, if you
Mhm.
vacuum seal it in a jar, it's not going to go bad or anything. You just hold on to it and
That sounds like a really cool
enjoy it.
experience.
And like the wax and stuff that you
Mhm.
scrape off the top, it usually has some honey on it.
Sure.
And then you can like use that as chewing gum,
Yeah. You
like
did that,
natural
huh?
gum.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the texture is a little weird.
Right.
Especially as you get more and more of the honey out while you're
Mhm.
chewing it.
And it just becomes wax,
Yeah,
which is also the product of the bee.
it is.
Like,
But that's what's pretty amazing about it.
it's
Like,
pretty cool.
once you get in touch with nature like that, you realize that nature really did give us everything that we needed, but we're on like this.
We think we can do a better job, huh?
Yeah, and we have like this fixation with the most toxic thing we could probably take out of the earth, which is petroleum.
Mm.
And like we use that for everything, and we use products that are way too based on it. So
Get out of here.
no, let him be.
All right. He's gonna start licking on you and stuff. That's what he does. All right, cool. So Kay Cassiano just jumped in on the chat stream. He said he was going to mention, I guess, about the bees migrating or traveling to random places. I don't know what the bees are doing.
Well,
I just know
they're-
that there's not as many of them where they are supposed to be, quote unquote, supposed to be, I guess. You see that there on the chat stream?
Well, I know that as far as these particular bees, they're pretty, they're domesticated.
Sure.
And, you know, they're also bees in general tend to be territorial unless there's something climatically happening to like drive them away from an area.
Mm.
So their particular bees would come back to their beehives all the time.
Sure, well,
because
that's
they're
their home.
domesticated. Yeah.
Right. So, I wanted to get back to I mentioned earlier, I wanted to get back to the modeling that you were doing. So you mentioned that you started modeling in after you moved to Florida. How old were you when you started modeling?
I was actually 17, and it all started because of my mom. She signed me up for John Casablancas, which is like a modeling school, which doesn't make sense because you don't need schooling to be a model.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you, like, what kind of stuff do you learn in there? Well, I don't know. I feel like, I think models, if they're good, have a certain look and an air about them. Does that not come from training, or because people just take pictures and they don't look like models? Even if they're dressed like a model, even if they do their makeup right, they don't sachet chante like a model.
Well, you still don't really learn how to do that in John Casablancas or any other, modeling school or training program.
So if you have some advice for a young up-and-coming model, would you tell them to go to one of these things, or do you get a lot of good networking?
It wasn't necessarily bad for me. As a matter of fact, it's knowing that my mom paid good money for that motivated me to be persistent and to actually go out and get modeling jobs. But what they do when you go to an information session for those modeling schools, they tell you, oh, you need to go through a training program because we have connections with agencies, and that's how you're going to get real work. And the reality is, after you go through the training, you're on your own. They're not going to get
network you into something?
They're not going to get you work because all they needed from you was your tuition payments for those modeling classes. So I don't want to name any other names. If you want to do it for, your personal development or to build up confidence. Because they do have like at least in John Casablancas, they have like runway classes. Although the runway walk that they teach you is sort of irrelevant when you start doing real runway shows. Because if they, if the designer doesn't have a preference, then you would just do like a regular runway walk. If they do, then they're usually going to choreograph it for you. Whereas John Casablancas goes in through like all these techniques, like different turns, and they actually name them, and nobody uses that when you actually go start doing real runway shows.
So there's so depending on the designer and the show, there's a certain walk that you do?
Yeah. Different designers have a different motif with their collection.
Can you describe sort of like what that means? Because to me, like when I walk, I just sort of walk, and then I guess they could tell me to walk more passionately, I guess, or like, yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
So the walk that you do if you're modeling evening gowns or bridal gowns is going to be completely different from if you're modeling urban clothes or high fashion. So your attitude's going to be different. Usually for evening gowns, you're slower, softer, pretty. For casual clothes, you can even be happy and smiley, which people don't usually think you can walk down the runway with anything but, the
like
statue
the stoic
face.
Yeah.
Yeah. The stoic face and like the really like fierce walk and stuff, which most people think of when they usually think of modeling, that's for high fashion. And again, if a good model will walk for the specifications of the designer. So
do they brief you, I guess, ahead of time?
Well, it's usually a good idea to ask. Because I mean, not all designers will brief you, but designers who care will brief you. And if they don't, you can always take your cues from the music.
Okay.
Yeah. If they're playing a fast-paced song, then you don't want to be taking a stroll through the park.
You want to match tone and pace.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Exactly.
Do they tell you what the sound is going to be, or what the track list is going to be, or do you know what you're going to walk out to ahead of time? Usually,
yes, but anything can happen.
What's the craziest thing that's happened to you on a modeling event?
Well, it was actually, I want to say my second to last fashion show before I left, before I graduated and I left Miami. The designer fit us about 2 weeks prior to the show. We ended up wearing none of the clothes that we were fit in.
Wow.
He changed his mind completely on what all of us were going to wear. The show started 2 hours late because the venue wasn't ready, and also because he wasn't ready. He had his sewing machine backstage.
Whoa.
And was sewing like 3 outfits together up until like 10 minutes before we had to go out. It was pretty much the most chaotic fashion show that I've ever done.
Where was it? In Miami?
Yeah. I don't want to name any names.
Well, no, I'm not gonna. No, yeah. Okay. I can imagine that would be pretty hectic. How big was the show? Like, how many people were there?
Well, it was at a pretty big venue. The only unfortunate part was that we were using the restaurant part, which the kitchen didn't close till 10, so that's why the fashion show ended up getting pushed back so late. And, once everything was set, like the chairs and stuff, we did have a pretty good turnout. It was great. We did 3 looks per model. But just leading up to the show, he didn't stick with any of his original plans, which is what led the chaos to ensue. but it was still, I mean, I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't fun.
Yeah, I mean, so when that kind of stuff happens, how do you feel about that? How do you take it?
I don't know. You just have to
So you just roll
shake
with
your
it.
head and
Right.
roll with it, yeah.
Do you ever watch any of those reality shows about the modeling thing? Didn't like Tyra Banks have something or somebody? I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
she has America's Next Top Model. I used to watch it much more
mm,
before I actually started modeling.
mm,
Yeah. So
that didn't
when I
bug
was,
you or scare you the way they like are so competitive or so, or is that because of Tyra?
well, one thing you have to realize about that show, it's better for her than it is for any of the models who are on it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So
So it's not like that in real life, right? Well, like, what's the dynamic like between you and the other models?
I always tried to have good communication, like a good relationship, or, be on good terms
Mm-hmm.
with all the models I know. A large part of that is due in part because I was always a freelance model, and a lot of the times I made friends with other models who were agency models, and if they had a job that they didn't want to do, they would refer me to their agent, and that's how I would get other jobs. So it really wasn't in my interest to ever be mean to a girl.
Mm.
And I mean, I treat modeling like I treat any of my other work. I don't want to be in a bad work environment, and I don't want to have animosity against any of my coworkers. So even though when I go to a casting, I'm competing with all the other models I know, we're still on a level playing field.
Mm.
Because a lot of the times, the people that are doing the casting, they don't even know what they're looking for. So we're all there, we're all different colors, looks, shapes, sizes, even. And we're at the mercy of the people holding the casting.
So what goes through your mind when you're at a casting? Like, what's your aim, I guess?
Please hurry up so I can move on with my life.
Really?
Yeah.
As far as their decision,
It's really time consuming.
Oh.
You get there, you sign your name to a list, you give them your pictures, you wait. They look at your pictures, they move you from one room to the other, you wait some more. Then, they give you some forms, you fill out the forms, you return the forms, you wait some more. So one casting can be like a 3-hour process. And mind you, you're not guaranteed to get the job
Right.
whatsoever. So you have to kind of get used to the idea that you are potentially constantly wasting your time.
wow. That doesn't
So-
sound like much fun at all. But is it worth it though in the end when you do
Yeah,
get the
if
job?
you do get the job, it's totally worth it. I mean, it's the ultimate validation. But you also have to be level-headed enough to not take it too personally if you don't get the job. Because it doesn't mean that you're not beautiful or that there's not something great about you. It just means you weren't what they were looking for.
I think that's a really good attitude to have.
And most models or most girls that try to do it, for a longer period of time, you really do have to develop that attitude. Otherwise, it's just going to tear you down.
Yeah,
Because you have to constantly deal with rejection.
sure.
And that's another thing that, I guess people see on the reality shows and they're like, oh, it's so terrible.
Mm.
Well, if that girl is serious about doing that, that's going to be the next, depending on how old she is at the time that she starts taking it seriously,
Mhm.
that's pretty much going to be the next 5 to 7 years of your life, is being rejected like 90% of the time.
Wow.
So
That doesn't wear you down a little bit?
again, you just have to have a level head about it. It doesn't come easy. I don't think anything that's in the subjective fields of the arts and entertainment comes easily. I think all other creative people and artists have to deal with it just as much.
Sure.
And I know people don't generally think of models as creative people or part of the art form, but that's how I perceive myself and other models.
So you think people, well, is that like something that you found that people they don't consider, like, because you have to embody that attitude or that, that designer, or if you're effective, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I would
All the
I would
best
consider
models do
that
that.
art, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, some people
when
can
you
do it, some
say-
people can't, right?
true. But that's when you take a more serious analysis of modeling. Usually when girls, or when a girl says, or anybody says, I'm a model, you don't, it doesn't evoke the same respect I feel like it used to. In the era of the supermodel, which was really like the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, you had.
What do you think that was that sort of brought so much attention to that, and what's different now in your take?
I think marketing changed. That's, to me, what created the difference in the attitude.
So in what way? What do you mean?
So, in the era of the supermodel, when major companies wanted to build an ad campaign, they would take a girl and take her face and build up her brand along with their brand.
I see. So they would almost have their spokesmodel in a way.
Exactly. Now, when you think of spokesmodels, those are usually actors and actresses. I think at some point marketing teams and business figured out that it's a lot cheaper to take someone who already has a brand or an image, like a model or like an actor or so forth, and use them in the marketing campaign than to take a model or an unknown face and give them a ad contract worth hundreds of thousands and maybe even millions of dollars, and use them to promote that brand.
Well, how about, I mean, there's still some out there, right? Like Victoria's Secret. Don't
Yeah,
they
but
use the same
Victoria's
models?
Secret's
And
one of the last brands,
I
and
see.
you may not realize this, but most Victoria's Secret models are either approaching their 30s or in their 30s, which is really old for models, but obviously
Sure.
they're very well maintained. All the ones that you think of supermodels, they started rising, when I was like a toddler. So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So, what was your first gig? Were you really nervous?
My first gig was actually here in Jacksonville, and
Oh, okay.
it was a show for a purse designer, and it was in the upper suite of what used to be called the Modus building. Now it's like Wells Fargo.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was really fun. I was still in high school. I was like only 17, I think, and just the feeling, like the butterflies and the adrenaline that you get from walking
Yeah, he's
from walking
Yeah.
down the runway is pretty great. And I think once you experience it the first time, it's just like any other like extreme sport where people become adrenaline junkies. I think that's what keeps you going,
yeah.
is the exhilarating feeling that you get when you're
What
on
is it
the
about
road.
modeling that gives you that?
I don't know. Maybe that's what distinguishes a hobby from a passion.
Mm.
Maybe that's what it is. I'm not saying that all girls should do it or everybody would get that same exhilarating feeling and, feel great afterwards. Because some people, people react to high exposure situations differently. To some people, it's, a high. To some people, it's extremely stressful and terrible and they don't ever want to do it again. But
Yeah,
I
I
think
could
it's
see
worth
that.
trying.
Oh, so for those of you out there that are listening, give us a holler, 904-638-5119, or join us on the chat stream. We'd love to hear from you. Um, so let me ask you, would you say modeling has affected you?
It's definitely given me, I guess you could say, more confidence. I think before I started model, and even in, the years before I went off to college and started doing more professional modeling in Miami, I was always doubting myself whether I wanted to pursue it, whether I wanted to be a model, whether I was good enough to be a model, and kind of always doubting my looks.
Hmm.
So it's benefited me in that way because it's really helped me get grounded in the fact that beauty is subjective.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of other girls deal with that too. Because as girls, I think we are more judgmental of ourselves in our image, like how we look. Guys, I think, at some point do get that consciousness or self-consciousness, but girls get it earlier and girls get it more.
Do you work with any guy models?
I know a few male models. I've never done like a shoot with a guy model.
I see. Do you think
Because
they go through the same doubts and the same that mental process?
honestly, I think everything in life is so much easier for guys, including being a male model,
Wow, really?
because there's less guys that are looking to do it. So they
So the
face,
competition isn't
exactly,
quite as
they
stiff.
face less competition. And in the event that you are like, a hunky heterosexual guy that does it,
You're
you just,
surrounded by models.
you're like set.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. So you and I are Facebook friends,
Yeah.
and every once in a while I see these status posts, and you always seem to have, not always, but a lot of times, there seems to be some tension between you and the male of the species. And so you're an attractive girl. I mean, obviously you're a model. You're successful at it, right? So you get some pressure from dudes trying to talk to you and stuff like that. Well, tell us about that. What's that like? What's your experience been?
I don't think my experience is any different from, most girls out there. I think in general, girls get approached more than guys. So,
Well, that's just, I mean, if a girl, I mean, most girls aren't the aggressor or out, instigating a conversation or that type of thing with guys. I mean, I think
yeah.
culturally that's just how it sort of is.
I mean, I think girls, because of what you're saying, because just the way that our cultural schematics are set up, girls get hit on more than guys. That's just a given. I don't think my situation's a whole lot different from that. It's just obviously being considered the, I guess, the standard of attractive or whatever. maybe I get approached more. I'm not sure.
Mm.
But then I have other things that offset it. Like I've had guys tell me that because of like I guess the way I hold myself, I can be very intimidating, so they'd rather not approach me.
Mm.
Obviously because nobody likes rejection, and I think
They could probably take a cue from your modeling experience or any artist, as you said
yeah.
earlier, in that that's just part of it. You're going to get rejected 90% of the time.
Right, but your average person would rather not get rejected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do guys do wrong?
Oh God, so many things.
What's the most heinous, like one or two things?
Well, see, this is a double-edged sword. So, usually, and also it depends on like how you're approaching me. Usually, if you straight off the bat approach me with like a compliment to my looks, then we're kind of in a situation where I'm like, okay, what else is new?
Okay.
So, but then if you're smart, like if you're a smart guy and you approach me about some other attribute that I guess you've noticed that I have, then I'm like,
Like what? Like if I'm a guy, so I'm just looking at it from a guy's perspective. If I don't know you, I see you across the room. I'm like, wow, she's stunning. I wonder what she's like if she's nice or if she's smart or any of those things. So I come over to break the ice and I say, wow, you look gorgeous. That would be a big no-no in a way.
well, no, I would just smile and say thank you. It's very nice of you to say, and then just find a way to disappear.
Really?
Yeah.
So what would you prefer a guy do? For all the guys out there that might be out of the three people
Well,
that are
again,
listening.
if you're able to compliment me or approach me about something else, like if you're
Like your purse?
maybe,
Yeah.
or I don't know.
But that'd be sort of odd if a guy really noticed your purse.
Yeah, I guess. But like, I guess designers or clothing, yeah, that would be weird for a guy. But if you take notice of something that's not typically noticed, like maybe something I say, but in that case you'd already have to have a conversation established, so that's a catch-22. But
So really a guy can't win. They just have to
No.
be persistent, huh? So
Pretty
chase you
much.
around when you go run away after they come up and say, hey, you have awesome eyes or something.
yeah, I guess.
I mean, because they
Honestly-
couldn't come up and say, hey, what do you think about the idea of Yellen starting a taper right now on the,
That
on
would actually be
quantitative
pretty
easing?
hot.
Yeah, but how would, if a guy came up to girls and just said that, no, I mean, just be honest. I'm
I
not trying to
think that's
stereotype, but let's just talk about
But
the
here's the
people
thing, I
that you
think
know
if guys did more,
and hanging out with. Like if a guy came up and said that to one of them, like not you obviously because you're a finance nerd, but a guy wouldn't know that just looking at you.
probably
Right.
not, no.
So imagine most of your like your model friends, if you have friends that are models or friends that aren't necessarily like you and into the financing. If a guy came up and said that, what would they say?
I don't know. I think the general response would be kind of like, huh? What? Like, why are you even asking that? What are you talking about? I think offbeat questions are a great way to start a conversation. Obviously, it shows you're unique and you have different interests.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's much more important than being able to observe and state the obvious.
Sure. I
But
see.
that's just me. Every girl is different though,
Oh, right.
and I don't think you can really pool all models together because,
Well, it's not really all models. I'm talking about you in particular.
So like I said, I think an offbeat question is like a
Yeah.
great way to
So guys
start a
listening out
conversation.
there, offbeat question. Well, are you currently seeing someone right now? I mean, if you don't mind, because if someone was listening, they'd be like, oh, I don't want to like infringe on you, get beat up or something.
No, you're not gonna get beat up.
Well, if there's a guy out there, they might be, you know, get all
Don't
chest
worry, I beat up
puffy
all the
and-
guys for whoever's listening.
Okay.
All the guys have already been beat up.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, because I can imagine, yeah, a guy wouldn't want to be rejected, but at the same time, I don't know that. Yeah, I think
It's a
traditionally,
trade-off.
huh?
It's a trade-off.
Yeah, I think traditionally, like that's all we would have to go off of. With like, you know, and you would always think, well, if we compliment a girl's looks, then that's got to be good, because that's nice, I guess.
Yeah, but again, all I was saying is, it also depends on the way that you
Well, sure.
approach.
Hmm.
Because there's definitely ways that you could come off very nice and like you're sincere, and then there's the alternative where you just come across like creepy, and then that's usually when you just want to like find
Yeah.
a way to disappear. So obviously watch your tone and your eyes.
Good points. Good points. See, people should be listening to this more often. They'll learn a ton of things. Lots of life lessons here.
Yeah,
So let's.
I certainly hope so.
So tell me about your master's. What are you pursuing?
Well, I don't have a concentration yet. I'm just doing an MBA at UNF and just started this spring.
What's your undergrad in?
Undergrad was economics with a minor in business.
Ah, okay.
So-
So you didn't like it when I was making fun of economists and stuff all that much.
I don't remember all that many.
Oh yeah,
like,
I make fun of
instances.
economists all the time.
Well,
I said, you know,
economists.
because I feel like it's more art or religion than science almost. It's like religion based on numbers.
Pretty much, yeah. And a lot of economists are ridiculous in how complicated they make very simple fundamental principles. Like, you know, nobody will figure out a way to complicate a simple thing like an economist. So
I see.
I kind of agree with you in that respect. Having an undergrad in economics far from makes you an economist.
Oh, but right. yeah.
Especially with the level of math that's done in undergrad now. I just don't think it's.
Is it a high level or low level of math?
No, I think it's a low level.
Mm.
Even though with an economics degree, you're going to have a lot more statistical analysis and metrics components than you would with general business or any other discipline. I still think it's not nearly enough. Like in my entire economics undergrad, I had to do maybe like 3 regression projects where you're like modeling a set of data, which, like I said, far from makes you comfortable with the process or makes you an economist.
Well, sure. But I guess it's enough for you to have a general idea of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what undergrad is all about. At the same time, I'm pretty certain I'm not going to do a concentration in economics for my master's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
Well, I'm probably going to end up doing finance just because
Because that's the
of
field that
exactly
you're in.
of where we're working now.
Do you really like it? The concepts and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm going to have to see, because I like working in finance. I don't know if I'll like studying finance,
Mm.
just because the class that I'm taking right now is called The Fundamentals of Managerial Finance.
Mm-hmm.
And that title and that terminology really annoys me, because the class is actually the difference between financial and managerial accounting. That's
yeah.
what the material we're actually covering in the class. It's about accounting. It's not about finance. It's not about those business processes of.
It's really about the finances of running a business in a way, right? Because like your balance sheets and all of that kind of stuff.
Exactly, but that's accounting.
Right. Well, okay, yeah.
Finance is.
Well, wouldn't that be okay? I'm trying to remember back to my accounting, managerial accounting, and managerial finance classes, and trying to see. That felt like they were very
Managerial
similar.
finance is where you would get the funds to fund the business.
Hmm. Accounting
That is
seems like
not
the
what we're-
language of where do I put stuff
The
and
book,
keep
exactly,
keep
the
track of
bookkeeping,
crap.
which is what this class is about, which means it's not a finance class, it's an accounting class.
Yeah, I hate accounting. I'll just say that. I don't know how people pop out
I don't
of
think
school
anybody
wanting
likes
to be an accountant.
accounting, but if you manage to get the hang of it.
Yeah, sure. There's plenty of money in it and plenty of jobs out there. So, Kay Cassiano jumped back into the chat stream. He says, if a man hitting on you is too chicken to stay because of rejection, you weren't hit on by a man. Do you feel that way?
Very well said. I
Well,
agree.
hold on. So, if he continues pursuing you, that's better? I mean, there's got to be you're probably coming up with some kind of conclusion off the initial interaction, right?
So,
I mean, going back to this
I
subject.
have someone who is now a guy friend.
Sure.
But initially, obviously, started out by trying to date me.
Mhm.
And he concluded, I guess, that portion of his attempts with me by saying that something along the lines of trying to like get to the point where you're even able to date you is like climbing Mount Everest. Like
Whoa.
it's way too freaking hard, I guess. I don't know.
Is it?
I don't think so. I think it's
You don't
actually
put
very
guys
simple.
through the ringer?
No. Everybody
If they're the
starts
right
on a,
guy,
But no,
then you
everybody
wouldn't. I would
starts on the
assume,
same
right?
playing field.
Everybody.
I mean, now you're just using my words against me.
I'm not just saying. I mean, let's just face it. Not all dudes are created equal. I mean,
Yeah,
you probably have
true.
a type,
Here's the
right?
thing. How would you
I
used to
describe your
date a
type?
whole lot less.
Yeah.
But then one of my girlfriends was like, well, you're not really, even, if somebody approaches you, you're not really giving them a chance. You're just automatically spotting the things that are wrong, like you should give them a chance, yada, yada. So I listened to her, and I'll give guys a chance now, but I'm a strict believer in the 3 strikes, you're out. So it's not my fault. They all blow through their strikes like in the first 15
Like, what's a
minutes.
strike? Give me an example of a strike.
Okay, if you say something that just shows to me, like deep down inside of you, you're a bad person,
Well,
then that's a strike. Like if you don't,
like what? Like in my off time, I like to kick puppies. Like that? Is
if
that
you're
what you
saying
mean?
it jokingly, then that's actually a strike for you because you have a sense of humor.
It's a strike?
No, it's a strike for you, not against you. Does that?
Oh, that's like a point.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
good point because
All right.
you have, I guess, a sense of humor.
But I mean, I'm trying to think of like what would one say? Like what would a guy say that shows that they're just really not a good guy?
Possibly worst thing you could do is talk bad about your ex
Oh,
or anybody
there's
that
guys
you've
that just
dated
do that?
or that you've been with in the past.
They talk about that?
Yeah, I had a guy who was like,
I think that's really weird to talk about. I mean, I don't care necessarily if a girl does, if that's what they feel like is necessary to do, but I almost don't really like to hear about
I
it that
agree
much.
with you, and especially talking bad about that person. Whatever happened, they're still a part of your life.
Sure.
And I just think it's a bad sign if, without it even being necessary to bring them up, you bring them up, but then on top of that, in a bad light. It's almost like you don't have enough going for you, so that you have to bring something else down to make yourself seem higher up.
And that would be
You know,
a
I
strike.
feel, yeah, that would be a strike, because I feel like if you were a good person and you had stuff going for you, you would be bringing that up instead of bashing your ex.
Gotcha.
Stuff like that.
3 times and you're out. Done.
Yep, pretty much.
Gotcha. Well, I think that's pretty interesting. I'm learning a lot. Well, I think that's because I don't know anything about like hitting on girls and stuff like that. To me, that's always been a mystery and a strange thing.
Here's the thing, I think, I mean, it's a mystery for all men, but
Because I think girls have to
Men-
be on their guard so much because there's so many creepers out there, and so like, how do you differentiate
bad
yourself
apples
from the
ruin it
creepers?
for everyone.
Yeah.
yeah, that could be true. But the other thing is, maybe men go under the assumption that
Go on.
girls actually know about themselves and know what they want. And the reality is, girls are oftentimes just as much of a mystery for themselves as they are for men. I think most girls don't know what they want until they actually see it.
All right, so elaborate
Myself
on.
included, actually. I'm willing to admit that. I don't know what I want, but I know I haven't seen it yet.
Ooh. I mean, I think that makes sense, obviously, because if you saw it and if you were around it, you probably would have latched to that. So, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I see that that could be a parallel to like when you're on your modeling, like audition, or what did you call it?
Casting.
Or the casting. You don't. Does the designer or whoever's doing the decision making, do they
That's
really
actually a
know
great
what they
analogy.
want?
Yeah.
My sister's an actress, and when I hear you talk, there's a lot of similarities. And she said she was in LA constantly getting rejected, and as soon as she said, "Look, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but all I'm doing is trying to do what I think they want me to do," and then she said, "Look, I don't know what they want. Obviously I'm wrong. So I'm just going to be me. I'm going to do the best me that I can and the best interpretation of whatever it is that I'm supposed to do that I feel comfortable with." And she got the job. And she got every other job. Well, maybe not every other job, but
Her success rate.
from
went
her,
up.
the success rate went up because she was who she was, and then they saw that new thing. So if you're going off of what you think their expectation is, you're only going off of what they've seen in the past, not the new thing that
they're
is yet to be
looking for.
discovered
Yeah.
or found, and say, "Oh, you're it. You're the one. You're what I'm looking for," as opposed to "I'm looking for this thing. Can you reproduce it?"
Yeah.
kind of thing. I see. So guys need to just come in, be themselves. If they make it, they make it. If they don't, they don't. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the casting
Because-
director doesn't want your shit, in other words. Right? So I think that makes sense. So Super Anti-Hero jumped on the chat and says she agrees with you that you make sense. Guys, there's my dog going crazy again. They say the same tired lines, the same posturing many times daily. Something bit offbeat would be good for catching their attention. I still wonder though, the offbeat thing, because what offbeat thing do you say if you don't know them? Like if you don't know a girl, like what, if a guy just came off with some offbeat thing, then it would almost seem cliche, wouldn't it? Like, oh, he's trying to be offbeat, he's trying to like be special.
Well, if you're gonna categorize what's offbeat, doesn't that defeat the purpose?
I don't know.
I
Well,
think it
that's what
does.
you're sort of doing. You said something offbeat earlier, and Super Antihero agrees. I'm presuming Super Antihero is a girl, and and they're saying that's something offbeat. So in a way, you're categorizing it. But who knows? Like you said, you obviously don't really know what you want exactly. Otherwise, you would have already got, you're already there.
Yeah.
So they just have to just try their best to be themselves and see if that works.
I think that's the best way to go about it because, I mean, with relationships, I really do believe there's one person to like perfectly match you.
So
And
do you believe in a
it's-
soulmate?
Exactly.
You do?
I do believe in a soulmate. And I also
How many
believe,
soulmates do you think you could have?
as far as,
I mean, there's a whole world of people out there. Like how?
I guess you could have soulmates in different aspects, but I believe we have like one ultimate soulmate, which is like the person that we're compatible with in the most, I guess, compatible sense of the word, I guess. And you can spend your entire life with that person. And if you don't find that person, or if you end up, you know, being in a relationship or marrying somebody other than the one who's your soulmate, I think that's why relationships will eventually fail, because you don't exactly match in all frequencies. Maybe you're spiritually aligned, like partially, like in a certain percentage or something, but then there's always that percentage that you made a compromise on that's not exactly matching.
Sure.
Eventually, people usually get tired of making compromises, or, you know, they decide they no longer want to live with the compromise. They want to see if there's something better. So I think that's why relationships fail. But if the person is your soulmate, then they would have been your soulmate at any point if you'd met earlier than the time that you did meet and you think you're soulmates. They would have still been your soulmate. If you meet them at any point in the future, they would still be your soulmate.
Do you think you are destined to meet your soulmate? Is it possible to go your entire life without ever meeting your soulmate?
I think that's where faith comes in. And I think the most you can do is just pray that you're not that one person.
Do you pray that you meet your soulmate? Is that like something that you
To
actively
me,
do?
meeting my soulmate falls under the general prayer. I always ask that God bring good people into my life. So I think that is implicit in that.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
I think the best thing that God can give us is good people in our lives. Because if you meet the wrong people or bad people, then nothing can save you from that.
Gotcha. Oh, Super Antihero weighed in. Actually, Super Antihero is a guy.
As a guy.
But we got the point. Thank you, Super Antihero, for bringing that up. Obviously, this fella's going to be a pretty formidable dude out there in the scene, because he apparently understands that
Shout out
what's going
Sophia
on.
and
Yeah,
Taylor.
so he's taking some notes, or already knows.
Here I am, like, hand motioning to the screen like there's a camera. Thank God there's no camera.
Well, nobody would have known that, but now you said it.
I know.
So you mentioned earlier before the show that you're taking part in a new show that's coming up. You want to tell everybody about this show?
Yeah, so, well, actually, next fashion show that I have is going to be April 26th, and it's going to be at Sweet. You can check out my
That's
Facebook
sweet.
profile. Yeah.
Okay.
The nightclub. So that's going to be on April 26th. The next one after that, which I'm really excited about, because it's going to be
Is there an event
about,
page for that first one? Or that one that you mentioned before?
I
or-
believe there is. It's probably somewhere on my Facebook events.
Should I link your Facebook here?
Yeah, you can go ahead and do that because I don't know the event page off the top of my head. But again, the second one that I'm really excited about is going to be on May 3rd. That one is going to be taking place during the Riverside Arts Market.
On May 3rd? Okay.
Yep. Which, if you're not familiar with the Riverside Arts Market, it's like under the Fuller Warren Bridge, right next to like where the Commer is. So the
Sorry,
reason
my
I'm
dog's
excited
going
about
crazy
that
right
one.
now. Hey, Nike, chill out, man. You crazy?
Aw,
He's crazy.
poor dog in the doghouse twice in one night.
He's just going outside. He likes going outside.
So
All right,
that
so let
one
me put that up here.
is
so-
really, the second one is also really exciting because it's going to be all of the designs that are showcased in it. First of all, are actually going to be. I just met with Pat Davis. She's going to be the lady sewing the dresses. She measured us, so everything is going to be custom tailored, and it's also going to be produced with 70% or more organic material.
Wow.
So organic cotton, linen, and other fibers. And it's sponsored by Girls Gone Green, which is a local organization, and Silver Needle and Thread, which is Pat's organization. And again, she's doing all the sewing. So that's going to be really exciting, and that's another event that I'll be sharing on my page. So I hope
So
you guys.
I guess the best place to get notified about these new things is on your Facebook page. Is that right?
Pretty much. I mean, I have an official website, which is IzabelSophia.com, but I don't update that regularly.
Well, why not?
It's just too much work. It's so much easier to just pop Facebook up on my phone and do it that way.
All right, so IzabelSophia.com, is that right?
Yeah, that looks correct.
Okay, so put that up there. Awesome. Well, that's cool. Hopefully, I mean, some folks check the archives on this. I know we had 3 awesome viewers. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. So for those folks know, and tons of folks check out the archives, and make sure those of you guys that are listening, if you enjoyed the show, please tell folks that that you care about to check out the show. And if you want to be on the show, send me an email at theboydpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you on the show. Even if you're not local, I can get you in via Skype, and you'll get your audio on the podcast. So pretty excited about this next show that you got coming up?
I'm excited about both. I mean, any fashion event going on in Jacksonville is definitely worth getting excited about. Obviously, as active as Miami is in the fashion scene and the art scene, it's still considered a secondary market. So I guess you would call Jacksonville a tertiary market.
Well, like a
Meaning
primary
there's
would be
not a
like
lot
New
of
York
stuff
or
going
something,
on.
or what?
Wait, repeat the question.
Like when you said Miami's a secondary,
Yeah,
what would be
meaning
a
it's
primary?
not a primary would be like New York, Milan, Paris, what you would
Oh, I see.
think of as big fashion cities. So any arts and fashion event going on in Jacksonville is pretty amazing for the local culture, and I think it's definitely worth checking out, and definitely for me worth promoting, because hey Jacksonville, I think you could get your culture up a little bit.
Awesome, for sure. Well, I want to check it out. I'm excited. I want to see what it's like. I want to see you on the runway. I think
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to
Especially
see
the one that's
embody
gonna
the
be-
designers, cues and whatever, and see how you do your art.
Well, I think in order to really experience that, you'd have to like come to Miami Fashion Week or something.
Oh, in Miami.
Yeah, I mean, again, local people are gonna try, but there's a lot of stuff, a lot of components in the atmosphere and just the scene and the tension and everything that you can really only experience at bigger fashion events.
Gotcha.
But you gotta start somewhere, so like I said, it's good to check out the local scene as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for listening. You heard Izabel. Check out the local fashion scene. There's shows going on around you. Jacksonville, get out there, support your local designers, your local boutiques. Really cool Girls Gone Green sponsoring this organic fashion show. Well, 70% or more or something like that,
Yeah.
right? Really cool stuff. So make sure you check it out. Check out Isabel's page and Facebook. And check out this guy. I don't remember exactly how to pronounce the name, but this track by Cypriot. I don't even know how to pronounce it anyway. Check that link that's on the chat stream. Thanks again for tuning into The Boyd. Another great show. Thank you so much, Izabel, for making it such an awesome show.
Oh, thank you, James Boyd, for having me. It's been awesome.
Thanks.
Good night, folks.
This is the girl that's got me falling low. This is the girl that I want. This is the girl that I want. Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. 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 Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. Baby, 'cause this is the girl that I want. Girl.